along with their in-house team at Volvo, who are known for their fancy cars, might I add. Remember that boxy one and the other boxy one? They looked flash. Hello and welcome back. I am Jason Hassett, the car nerd, and today I'm going to talk to you about a very nerdy topic indeed, because it involves Volvo, who's a very safe one to be around. If you're interested in Volvo, or you're interested in cars, or you just like the sound of my voice, don't forget to go ahead and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. It puts wine on the table, as you probably saw during the introduction, or will see in a moment, depending on editing. But anyway, enough of that. Let's just jump straight into the car. So today we're going to be talking about the 1961 Volvo sports car, the P1800, which was brought in as a successor to the absolutely failed P1900, which only sold 68 units. Volvo, on the other hand, turned this one into a success story, with even Roger Moore owning one and using his own one on the set of The Saint. Pretty cool. So let's jump straight into that. So this car came about in 1957, that's when the project started, because essentially Volvo was looking for a way to make an Italian-style sports car with Volvo-style quality that they could enter into the US and European market and go up against some other manufacturers who were doing a lot of these sports cars. Even Volkswagen at the time would have had their own sports cars. However, their first attempt, the P1900, was a massive failure, so this had to be better. And to do that, what they did was they put Helmer Petersen in charge. Helmer Petersen was put in charge of this project, and he was the guy who designed the PV444 for Volvo back in the 1940s. So he was a good person to be put in charge, as that was a very successful line of cars for the Volvo brand at the time. Obviously, that was just after the war. So when he started on this project in 1957, he wanted the design to be done very, very beautifully in Italian style, and therefore it was handed over to Pietro Frua in the Frua Design Agency, which was a subsidiary of the famous Ghia design company. However, there's an interesting fact about this. So the reason he decided to go with them was, one, Ghia would have been a problem, and two, Frua, his son was interning with Frua in Italy. His son Pele actually was an intern to Pietro Frua himself and helped on this project. But what we didn't find out, and wasn't confirmed until 2009, was that Pele Petersen, his son, actually designed this entire car, but Frua took the design as his own, and it wasn't until 2009 that Volvo officially stated that Pele Petersen was the actual designer of this car. So now they had this slick, beautiful design. The next thing they wanted to do was go ahead and move it into production. And like I spoke yesterday about the Chrysler turbine, which you can watch here, they wanted to outsource the manufacturing of this to be hand-built Italian sports cars to Ghia. So that was the original plan, but unfortunately about 10 seconds into this, one of Ghia's largest contractors, in fact their largest client, came along and said absolutely not. And that largest client was Volkswagen. It accounted for something like 70% of Ghia's business, so they were going to pay pretty good attention to this. And the reason for this was, around the same time Volkswagen had launched the Karmann Ghia, which was their own kind of sporty type car. And I'll do a piece on that at some point. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to learn more about the Karmann Ghia. So essentially, Karmann then shut that down, Ghia shut that down, and that was that. They couldn't go to Karmann or Ghia, and Volkswagen basically stopped them from producing it, and the car was essentially pushed aside for the time being, and it looked like it would never be released. So after the setback from the design of Ghia building or creating this incredible design, and then going to Karmann and then getting shut down by Volkswagen AG, like I said, the car was basically on the, whatever you call where dead cars go, I guess, the GM EV scrapyard. Plug, GM EV video, right here. Check it out. So essentially they decided, Volvo were basically deciding to just scrap this whole project. But they showed off their prototype, the X1, the original Ghia the Ghia designed car, should I say, at the 1960s Brussels Auto Show, and there was absolutely overwhelming desire for this car to go into production. And as such, Volvo decided it was time to look for a new production partner. Lucky for them, the British company Jensen Motors, who you're probably aware of from the Jensen Interceptor, their production lines were pretty much unused, or at least very, very unused compared to their production capacity, and as such they said they would build the car for Volvo. In terms of looks, this car did exactly what Volvo wanted it to. It was an Italian sports car, except they had molded it into a 2+2 Italian style sporting Grand Tourer, and it looked fantastic, as you can imagine, by a subsidiary of Ghia to design it, along with their in-house team at Volvo, who are known for their fancy cars, might I add. Remember that boxy one and the other boxy one? They looked flash. So this car had round headlights, which looks fantastic. Actually, at the front it looked a lot like the Karmann Ghia, except a little bit more kind of sporty and rounded. At the back, to accentuate the kind of loosely based tail lights, it had these big fins, which looked awesome as well. Very kind of 50s looking, but in the 60s. And these flies will not leave me alone. I don't know what's happening here. Help me, send help. Anyway, so the car's design was essentially inspired by Italian cars of before, and I think if you had to put this in front of 90% of normal bystanders who weren't big car heads, they would probably tell you that this was a Ferrari, because it did look a lot like the Ferrari 250 GT. And if you don't agree, put it in the comments and I will profusely argue with you. Profusely. Yeah, it does. In terms of engine, this used Volvo's V18B engine. Now, the B stood for Benson, which is the Swedish for gasoline. The 18 stood for the 1800 cc's of displacement that it had, and the V stood for Volvo, I believe. So this engine produced 100 brake horsepower with its dual SU carburetors. It was matched up with an M40 gearbox, and this was a weird one because it could redline even in its highest gear, and it had a top speed of 120 miles an hour. It was nothing absolutely amazing, but this was 1963. You got to keep in mind that, you know, cars at the time were not that powerful, and only a few years before, 120 miles an hour would have been the fastest production car of all time. So it's not that bad of a top speed. The result was that this car was massively popular with its nice performance, its durability, which Volvo is known for, along with the fact that it had the Italian styling. It just sold everywhere. It sold like mad for a sports car. Now, it didn't probably sell as well as some of the normal sedan Volvos at the time, but let's not kick it in the face for that. It sold 47,300 units during its 10-year run, and in 1973, its last ever year of production, a wagon version was introduced, and they were going to introduce a convertible version, which they did tease, but they never actually introduced it because that's what Volvo did at the time. Fly. So I'm going to go before this fly drives me absolutely insane. But thank you so much for watching, and if you really enjoy the Volvo P1800, please let me know below, because I would love to talk to you about it. But otherwise, thank you again. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you're reading this on Drive Tribe, please put a link in the comment, or please tell me in the comments. And yeah, if you could subscribe, because I gotta buy me some more spray for this fly thing to kill it.